Hey everyone, I'm Chelsea Tornado with At Home Author, and today we're going to talk about the 5 rhyme crimes that will land you in picture book jail. Before we get started, don't forget to like and subscribe for more great content about writing picture books. Picture book authors hear all the time, don't write in rhyme. And as an editor, I give that advice to my clients as well. I often say, why don't you try writing this without the rhyme and see how it goes? And the reason is that it's just really hard to do rhyme well. It has to be done perfectly. It has to have attention to detail. And a lot of the times it just takes sort of a determination to not settle for good enough. But if you are determined to write your next manuscript in rhyme, today we're going to talk about the 5 most common mistakes that rhyming authors make so that you can avoid them. So the first rhyme crimes that we're going to talk about are what I would consider minor violations, sort of like jaywalking or littering. These are crimes of carelessness. These are minor things that you may get away with every once in a while, but that if you're just starting out, you really need to try to avoid. So the first one is what we call slant or near rhymes. A slant rhyme or a near rhyme is when the 2 words are close but not quite. So you might have something like time and line, or number and summer, or rattle and little, that to a casual ear sound very similar, but aren't really a perfect rhyme. You want to try to avoid that. The second rhyme crime that, again, I think is kind of a minor violation is just the use of boring basic rhymes throughout a manuscript. So we're talking Dr. Seuss type things like cat, hat, rat, sat, go, no, low, all those super simple 1-syllable rhymes that are usually the most expected word to end a line with. The reason that you want to avoid those, I get this all the time, Dr. Seuss did it, so why can't I do it? Well, you're not Dr. Seuss, and we want to try to impress the reader and go beyond those basic rhymes. So again, if you can avoid it, try to come up with something a little more unexpected that's going to make the reader think, I never would have thought of that. The next rhyme crime that we want to talk about is what I would probably consider a misdemeanor. It's a little bit more serious than the first 2, and you're probably going to get caught if you try to use this one. And that is letting the rhyme drive the story. What we mean here is that maybe you're trying to rhyme with the word car, and you think and you think, and you finally end up, your characters are going to a bar. Not good for a children's book. Or it may be where you're adding information that just isn't essential to the story. So maybe you're trying to come up with a rhyme for the word seen, and all of a sudden you're telling us the grass was very green, which is fine, but not essential. It's a random fact that the reader doesn't really need to know. The best way to avoid committing this crime is to make sure that you have a plan for your story from the very beginning and that every word adds to that plan and adds value to that story. The second misdemeanor rhyme crime that I want to talk about is forced rhyme. Forced rhyme is when you sound like Yoda or a Shakespearean actor. In other words, you're using phrases in a way that sound a little awkward to the modern reader. So here's an example for you. Let's say the verse goes, "The robber and his partner drove off in a cloud of dust, and Spencer Sheriff chased them, shouting, 'Catch those crooks, I must.'" Obviously, that's not how people talk. So if you're sounding like Yoda, or if you're sounding like you're from the 18th century, that's a forced rhyme, and we definitely want to avoid that. And our 5th and final rhyme crime is what I would consider a felony. This is a crime that your manuscript cannot recover from, and that is writing without a consistent meter. What makes picture books so much fun to read, rhyming picture books, isn't actually the rhyme at all, it's the meter. And meter is the rhythm of a poem, it's the beat. And it comes from following a very consistent pattern of stressed and unstressed syllables. Now, some people can naturally hear this, and you can kind of just tell the rhythm as you read it in your head. Other people, it's more of a struggle, and they have to maybe hire a poetry coach to help them make sure that those stressed and unstressed syllables are in the right spot. So let me give you an example. I'm going to read you a passage from my own picture book. It's a Christian children's book called God Made You Too, and I'm just going to share one verse to show you what I mean. So this first verse has good meter, good consistent meter. And if you want to test and see whether you can hear meter naturally, you can try to kind of clap along to the beat of this. So it goes, the God who built the universe, who hung stars in the sky, the one who spins the planets round and makes the comets fly, the God who formed the depths of space for us to gaze into, saw that his work was not quite done, and so he made you too. If you can tell, there's a little bit of a beat to that. There's a rhythm. It's consistent. Here's an earlier version of that same verse without good meter. This was when I was just getting ideas down on the page and I wasn't really worried about it. But if you notice, the rhyme is still good. The rhyme is fine. There's no problem with that. It's the meter that's off. The God who built outer space and scattered the stars up high, the God who makes the planets spin and sends comets speeding through the sky, the God who created the galaxy for us to stare into, realized that his work wasn't quite done, and he created you too. The beat is just not there. It doesn't have that rhythm to it that makes it easy to read, and that's what meter is all about. So for this one, you really have to commit to having perfect meter. Like I said, it's totally doable to get a coach to help you with that, but you have to be committed to getting it right. You can't just say, that's good enough and let it go, or you're gonna get into picture book jail. One of the most common responses that I get to advice like this when I give it to my new authors is, but I've seen picture books that have committed these crimes published on the shelf at Barnes & Noble. So if those books can do it, why can't I do it in my book? And my answer to that would just be, you're a new author. Many of the books that you're pointing out that maybe have some of these crimes committed in them are by seasoned authors who have a following, who can get away with it, basically. A new author has to do everything they possibly can to present themselves in the best way possible, especially if you're submitting to a traditional publisher who's going to have many, many other manuscripts to choose from. And if you're a self-publisher and you want to stand out in the marketplace, you need to do everything you can to make your manuscript the best that it can possibly be. So don't settle for less than the best that it can be. So do your best to avoid committing these 5 rhyme crimes. And if you do, the next time you try to write a rhyming children's picture book, you just might get away with it.